In this video, I want to create a REST scheduler database on the Structurally Sound website using the REST scheduler web application. So here we are in the Structurally Sound website, and we go to the web application here. Now, initially we'd go to the About and request the trial database, and we'd specify an organization type for our teams, enter our email address, request the trial database. Then we'd get an email with the chapter code. The chapter would be created, and a ref assigner would be entered in the list of refs. So, and then if we wanted to continue with the database, we go to purchasing and request here that enter our email address and chapter code and request that the database be updated to permanent, which is free. And the trial is free and the permanent is free. So here we are at the REST scheduler application login screen page. And so we received the chapter code of RS 127, so we'd log in there as ref assigner, and so now here we see the database that we have, and it is an empty database with just one ref in there, and he is the ref assigner, and he has assigner privilege as displayed here, the fourth selection, which means he can update, edit, or delete any of the subject items in their various lists. These other menu items here, privileges, are what are given to our standard refs that are not assigners. For instance, this is the default right here, view your own schedule, and when a ref is created, and they would be able to view their own schedule but not edit or delete or update any of the anything in the database other than to return games or accept games. And well, they could edit their own information. That's right, they could edit their address and their availability. So anyway, let's go back to the refs. Now, when a REST scheduler database, as I said, has these subject lists. These three lists here, or these subjects, apply to teams. Now, teams are defined by, as this help menu says, are defined by their organization type, their level of play, and then an optional nickname. So right now our organizations are schools, and schools would have leagues such as girls varsity, boys varsity, girls JV, boys JV, and then if they had multiple teams at a particular league, that is, if there were multiple girls JV teams in a particular high school, say Valley High School had two girls JV teams, they could be here titled nicknamed the blue team and the red or the red team, or team A, team B, whatever. And then if this organization type were clubs, well, let's just say the organization types could be schools, clubs, any organization type, churches, businesses, bars, any organization type to which a team would be associated. Now, if it was clubs, Club A would have leagues of levels of play of boys U10, girls U10, U14, girls and boys, that is, or it could be co-ed, or adult men, adult women, adult co-ed. And if a Club A, for instance, had 6 boys U10 teams, the nicknames of those teams would uniquely define the teams. So for instance, lions or tigers or bears or whatever, eagles, So that's how the teams are defined. And here we have the sites. So the sites are either general sites that are usable by all organizations, or they are owned sites, such as that are specific to one item in the organization list, one particular organization or schools. For instance, here, if it was a school, Valley High School, for instance, might have 3 softball fields, girls' softball fields, and they could schedule those games, 3 different games at the same time, each on a different field. So when another example would be if this were clubs, Club A might have 6 soccer fields. And so when the games are defined, it would be on a particular field in that club. So those are private sites versus general sites. A general site might be a community softball field, and that might be usable by any church, say if it were a league of churches, and so that general site would come up as an optional selection for any home team in that church league. Well, anyway, so let's go ahead and create the database. We have the ref assigner here. So let's just change his name to Jim Miller. We could add Jim Miller separately, but let's do it this way here. And so he has the privilege of assigner. So now when we add new items, this selection here has to be on new. So we'll go Ted Martin, Bob Thomas. Now notice the default privilege is that they view their own schedule here. So they're not assigners. If they were a signer, they would have this privilege, this 4th one. And so we have Bob Thomas, Jim Miller, Ted Martin. Let's add Dawn Parter. Okay, so now let's view the refs, and there they are. And if we wanted to edit a particular ref, we could go here, or it would be take us to the same place, that is the ref page. Like if we were here and we wanted to edit Jim Miller and give him his address information, we could do that, or change his availability, say that he was unavailable for some days. So anyway, let's go back to the database, and let's create some schools. School 1, and let's give that an address. So we'll say 707 Stevenson Boulevard, New Kensington, PA 15068. Okay, so that's school 1, and that's listed there. School 2, school 3. Alright, now we can view our schools and leagues. We'll add them. Girls varsity, girls JV, boys varsity, boys JV. Okay, so here are the leagues, or we could view them in a grid. And now we'll create the teams. We could add them individually. Say school 1 girls varsity. Or we could use this tool just to create them all. So let's do that. And we'll delete this team we just added. And we'll go and create teams. Now there are two methods for creating teams, and they're very similar. Let's use the second one here. It creates a unique team for each combination of the organizations, that is the schools we selected. Here we'll select all, and the leagues we have defined. So we have 3 schools and 4 leagues. That'll create 12 teams if we create one team per combination. And so let's do that. Create one team for every league in every school. Yes, 12 teams. So let's go view those teams. And there they are. And we could subset them. Girls varsities. Or let's go back, show all the teams on school 1. Okay, so there we are. And show all. Okay, so now we want to create some sites. So let's add the sites. Now, the sites here we want to create first are associated with school 1. Say school 1 had 3 softball fields. So we want the sites to have a unique name. So we'll say here school 1, because school 2 might have 3 fields also. But let's get field 1. It's associated with school 1, and we could give it the address, the same address, 707. Now, if we just had one field, and the site would be the home school site, which would be the address of the school. That would be the default site. But if we selected school 1, we want to put in. We had multiple sites available to that school. We'd have to put the address for each site. So here we are, Stevenson Boulevard, Kensington, PA 15068. We could copy that and add it for each site or each field. School 1, field 2, add school 1, field 3, add. So we see we have 3 fields. Then we could also add a general site. Now we wouldn't associate that with any school. So we'll say community park, and we'll give it the same address just to use it as an example. Add, so now we have 4 sites to find. We could go view those sites. And I see this community park is a general game site. So we don't have any games to find. So we could go out and add individual games. Now when we add the game, we have a selection here of all teams, but we don't want that. We want them to be games that where teams within the same league play each other. So here we would subset the available teams to the girls varsity, and we want school 1 to play school 2. Now we can add the games that way individually. Let's just delete that game, or we could use the tool here and create the games. So when we create the games with the tool here, it's just going to create a bunch of games. It's going to between the teams that we select. So let's subset the teams here to the girls varsity, because we want teams in the same league to be playing each other, not teams in various leagues. So we'll select all those. Now when we schedule the game, we are going to start scheduling by default tomorrow. And that's the date and time. And each game that we create in this automatic tool is going to increment the next game by the time increment. So we'll say 1 day. So we want the time increment to be incremented. It could be between rounds, that is the first set of games. Well, let's say the schedule method is round robin, where each team plays each other team. And the second method here is single elimination, where the loser would drop out of the available teams to play the following set of teams. But we'll just go round robin here. So the first, we could schedule the time increment of those games to increase after each round or after each game. Here we're going to go each game and we're going to use the home team site, not the general sites, which would just randomly pick out general sites. We'll create those games. So we made 3 games. Now we'll create games between the boys varsity. We'll select them all, but we don't want these teams to be at the same time. So we're going to say those are at 5 o'clock. We'll go with the other settings. Create those games. Fine. Girls JV. We'll change that time to 3 p.m. And select those teams. Create those games. And then the boys JV. Select those teams. We want those games to be at 1. And we'll create those games. So let's see, did we create games for the boys varsity? Yes. Okay. So now if we wanted to look at a particular league, we could do that here. And boys JV, or if we wanted to see the games played at a particular school, we could say do that here. Or let's try now if I just wanted to see the S2's home games, I could click here and it would subset the games that way. Anyway, so now we have the games, but we don't have any refs assigned on those games. And this happened to be a soccer league, and we know that that could be changed in preferences here to a different league. So if we were to say it was a softball league, then we should get different titles there. So if we go to the games, and yeah, the plate, okay, who's on the plate and who's on the bases. But let's change it back to a preferences. It was soccer. Okay. So that's the preferences of the database, or various preferences. So we'll go with that. Saved it. Let's go view the games again. Okay, center ref. Okay, the ARs. So, and there's 2 refs on each of these games by default, because in the preferences again, that was our default. We left room for 3 max refs allowed on the game and the default number of refs on the game. So anyway, let's go look here at the games again. We have the games, but we don't have any refs assigned. Now we could go out and individually to a particular game and assign those refs to the game, or we could, which is probably how we would do it. But for this demo, we're just going to use this tool and auto assign refs to the games. And it's going to attempt to, and it did. So now we see that all those games have assignments. So that's our database. Now we could download this database. Let's just look at the if we put in the ref there, Jim Miller, the assigner, we did not give him an email. So let's do that so that when I download the database and I say send the database to the assigner, it will mail it to Jim Miller. So we'll go out here and let's see, to the import to the export data, and we want to assign that or mail that database to Jim Miller. Okay, so that was mailed to Jim Miller at ssol.com. So let's go out here and pick that up in the email, and we'll delete those. Okay. Oh, I may have deleted. There it is. Okay. There's the email with the database. I'm going to download that database. And here's the address of the database, and I'm going to put it in REST Scheduler's database, and I'll overwrite the existing one there, and I'll save that. And so now download it, and I have it on my local machine. Now, therefore, it's saved for if I wanted to upload that database in the future. So for instance, right now I'll upload a database and we'll import a different database, and I'll choose the database that I want to upload, DemoDB, and as a chapter, and I'll import that data. Now it's going to destroy everything we just created in that database and replace it with the database that was on my local machine that I just selected. So it's checking with me in this question. You sure you want to delete everything you just added, everything in your database, and replace it with this database that you're pulling off your local machine? I'm going to say, okay, go ahead. So now I know it's happening. It's spinning up here, and I'm waiting for it to import the database. And I'm still logged in as ref assigner here, which is fine, except that this ref assigner doesn't exist in the database I exported, and he doesn't exist in the database I just imported. But that's who I'm logged in as. So I'll look at that database, and I have these refs, these leagues, these teams, these sites. Okay, and if I wanted to look at the sites for a particular school, like for instance Springdale, they have 3 sites to find here in this example. Okay, so that's how that's done. Now if I wanted to log in as a particular ref, let's go import back the database that we created originally. So we'll go here and import, and we'll choose the file that's on our local machine, and we'll import that data. Now that's going to wipe out, first clear everything we just imported, the database we just imported, and it's going to replace it with the database that we initially created and saved to our local machine. And so we'll go ahead and do that. And so now it's doing it, and there it is. It's telling us we got 12 games and 12 teams, and let's check that out. And oops, that's showing me the games. I want to view here the refs, right? Jim Miller, Ted Martin, Bob Thomas, the leagues we created, the teams we created, the sites we created, the games we created, and the assignments. Now this is the menu presentation for the assigner, but we're going to log out here and say I wanted to log in as on that database, RS127 as Don Potter, So these are the games that this is what Don Potter would see, and the first thing he sees is his schedule. So he could select the games he wanted to confirm selected games. Let's see. He could select all the games and just say confirm those games. And after he selected them, maybe tomorrow he found out he wasn't available for a particular game, and he could come back and select a couple to turn back if that's what he wanted to do, if you allowed him to turn back. Now you could restrict that as the assigner in the preferences. So anyway, that's how we can create a database using the RefScheduler web application, and feel free to email me with any questions, and thanks a lot.